We now move to item D5, which is a discussion regarding interim city manager. There's some housekeeping business, I think, to attend to first. We have in your package, there was a contract for the interim city manager, acting city manager, actually. So I think it would be appropriate to start off if there are questions regarding the contract which was in your agenda package.
No question on the contract? I have no questions at this moment, but I would like to make a motion.
Hold on. I have questions.
Sorry,
Let me get through
discussion
discussion first, because it is a
Okay.
contract, so please, go ahead.
Am I on here? Okay. So the motion that I made at the last business meeting was that we appoint Lauren Johnston as the acting city manager per our city charter until we hire a permanent city manager. That passed unanimously, and what I'm seeing in the contract is that we can fire her without cause. That's listed in a couple places in the contract, so I have an issue with that language, being that the motion that unanimously passed is that she is to remain in place until a permanent city manager is hired. Specifically, if we look at sections 2D and 2F, they reference our ability to fire her without cause. So I think that that should be changed to with cause. Obviously, if something is done that warrants being fired, that shouldn't be taken from us, but without cause was not in the motion, and it should be stricken or changed, the language of the contract.
So, understood. Are there questions regarding Councilwoman Pontieri's suggested change?
I have a question.
Good.
We have always been able to hire or fire attorneys and city managers without cause. And that is something that's in our charter. It's not something we can change. Also, Lauren Johnson, who's done a really great job as assistant city manager, automatically became the acting city manager once Denise Bevan vacated this dais. We are now here to appoint an interim city manager. And again, I would like to make my motion, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm going to grant you the time to make a motion. Just one thing, because I got to take care of the housekeeping. So there is a contract in the package. Councilwoman Pontieri has requested a change. And Councilor, do you need to weigh in on this at this time?
I will, but
only because there was a suggestion. Okay, regarding the legality of the change to the contract. Does that represent any issue from a legal standpoint?
I mean, of course, from a legal standpoint. I mean, the council reserves the right to select its city manager, even the acting city manager at any time. While I respect the comment, I don't know why the city council would want to hamstring itself to remove the acting city manager for cause only, especially when the contract is written in a way that the acting city manager, once she's relieved of duty, whether a permanent is appointed or the council wants another acting city manager, she goes back to her assistant city manager position. So, I mean, it's council's prerogative, but I think the council, in my experience and opinion, should reserve the right to select its city manager or acting city manager at your pleasure.
So I would move forward for consensus now regarding Councilwoman Pontieri's suggested change. I mean, I'll move to the motion
But I am still concerned that this would be a violation of our city charter.
It's not a violation of the city charter.
Hold on.
Excuse me.
Go easy.
I'm asking our attorney. My understanding is that that's our right within that charter. We exercised that a couple weeks ago with our previous city manager. I know it was done not while we were here, but I think Mr. Kloufis might have been here when it happened the last time without cause. I would not see any reason why we would forfeit that right with any city manager.
So, Councilor, that would be a specific question. So it's been brought up. Is there a does that violate the charter as it's currently written in any way?
I think the charter's written, I have to look it up, but I think the charter's written in a way where the council reserves the right to make the hiring and firing and decision of the city manager at the council's pleasure. Now, there's a procedure that if the council were to act to terminate the city manager, there is a procedure by which, for cause, there's a procedure by which the manager can request a hearing and reconsideration of the.
Within a time frame, correct?
Within a time frame,
Okay.
I think it's 7 days off the top of my head.
30, request, yeah.
7 days from the
Right.
date of the action of the council, so.
So,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Pontier, before I proceed on, do you want to comment on that, based on your, because I'm going to have to ask for a consensus here
Well,
before we.
I don't think there needs to be a consensus. It would be a motion to accept the contract with the amendment, because it would be a majority vote. So it would be a motion to accept the contract with the amendment, that it be without cause. And the reason, Mayor, is not based on what we normally have the right to do. It's based on the language of the motion that passed unanimously at the last meeting. That specifically, if we look at the meeting minutes, and I clarified this numerous times, I restated my motion per the meeting minutes, unless somebody wants to now contest those minutes. Councilmember Pontieri restated the motion to appoint Assistant City Manager Lauren Johnson to Acting City Manager while council looks for a permanent hire. Then Councilmember Hyder, if you'll recall, specifically asked, well, how long could that be? And you, Mayor, said, well, I mean, that we really don't know, that's undetermined. And so we clarified that she was to remain in place until a permanent city manager was appointed. Because that motion passed 4-0, Vice Mayor Danko was not here, that is the motion that should stand unless somebody now wants to reverse that motion, and they'd have to be in the majority of that vote in order to do that, which he was not. So somebody who voted for Lauren Johnston to be our acting city manager until we hired a permanent city manager would now, per our policies and procedures, per Robert's rules, would now have to ask for a reconsideration of that motion.
Except that motion was not correct to begin with. She was already acting city manager.
He wasn't. Our
Yes, she
charter
was.
says we have the right to appoint an acting city manager per our legal counsel's advice that Mayor asked for. That is what we did.
Again,
All right, so-
she was already acting.
No, she wasn't, Vice
I let
Mayor.
you speak. Please let me speak.
But you're incorrect.
No, but you're interrupting me. And whether you think I'm incorrect is irrelevant.
All
I
right,
still get
all
to
right,
speak.
let's move on with the issue.
And so my feeling is this position automatically happened the moment Denise Bevan left.
Have you read the charter?
Are you going? Yes, I've read the charter.
Where does it say
Please do
that?
not interrupt me again. I don't interrupt you, Teresa.
Okay, let's move it on. Now, okay, there is a, Councilwoman Pontieri, do you need to weigh in on that?
On
There's
the
a
charter.
disagreement on the interpretation of
No,
the charter.
No, the charter requires the city council to even appoint an acting city manager. So, with all due respect, I would disagree that it was automatic, that Ms. Johnson would be the interim. It required a majority vote of the council to
Okay.
make her an interim city
Councilman,
manager.
thank you. Councilman Pontieri, I'm going to ask you just to restate your motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I want to make a motion first.
Well,
Doesn't get to jump in line.
We're going by the agenda.
yeah, we're going by the agenda, so we're talking about the contract, the housekeeping piece.
So what exactly is this motion?
Well, that's what I'm asking for, so just listen for a minute, and please restate your motion.
My motion is to accept the contract that has been properly placed on today's agenda as an agenda item for a business meeting per our policies and procedures, with the amendment, because of the motion that I made at the last business meeting, to amend sections
You have it?
2D and 2F to state that she can only be terminated with cause.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I would second for discussion, absolutely.
So I have a second from Councilman Clufus. So did you want to start the discussion?
For sure, I think if we can't come, if we can't come to consensus that without cause being an issue, I think the bigger problem is that at the very least, we didn't have a discussion for vacating our city manager position. So I hope that we could all come to a consensus that it's really the abruptness of what took place that gives me caution to side with Councilwoman Pontieri, that in a case where we do want to remove our acting city manager, even our formal city manager, I think it would probably be prudent for the city to act in a way where we have to have a discussion amongst our city council before we do so. And I think now we might even be more in a fragile state if we are trying to do things without having them workshopped first.
Okay, is there any additional discussion? Care to comment?
I think that the council may need to discuss this a little bit further unless we're going to have clear counsel, which I think we probably already have from our council. And I think the discussion that I had with Lauren just yesterday, she pretty much clarified to me with what it means to be terminated with cause or without cause. And my understanding on that is that if you terminate it with cause, you can appeal it, but the council has the right to terminate without cause also. And that also allows certain stipulations to be provided to that city manager or person that's being fired without cause, such as severance pay and a few other things we discussed. So I'm not totally clear on what we're doing here unless the council can really make it clear to me so that I can understand it.
So, Counselor, can you clarify the motion and the second that's in front of us now, just to make sure that all council members are clear on what the upcoming vote will be?
And based on the charter, what the charter says.
Okay. I would ask the clerk to just rephrase the motion, and then I will comment regarding the charter and the actual language that's in the proposed contract.
So the motion was to accept the contract which has been placed in the agenda, but with an amendment to sections 2D and 2F to state that Ms. Johnston could only be terminated with cause.
Does that clarify where we are right now for you?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. If you have a question, please ask, okay? Yes?
Oh, I wanted to then comment about the
Go ahead.
charter or question. Okay, so the charter provides that the city council has the authority to appoint both a permanent city manager, and then if a vacancy occurs in the city manager position, the council has the right to appoint an acting city manager. This interim services agreement is about assigning the duties on a temporary basis of city manager to Ms. Johnson. Okay, and so paragraphs D and F are, in my view, are written in a way that if the council is unhappy with Ms. Johnson or, just wants to replace Ms. Johnson's services as acting city manager, then this contract says the council reserves the right to do that. And then the contract says she goes back to her assistant city manager position. In subparagraph D that Ms. Pontieri references, it states that the employee acknowledges that this position as acting city manager is a temporary assignment and that the council, is actively recruiting a permanent city manager. And then at such time, the permanent city manager commences his or her employment, or the council terminates the employee as acting city manager, not as an employee of the city, but as an acting city manager, the duties of an acting city manager, then the employee is entitled to return to and resume her previous position as assistant city manager. Subparagraph D goes on to say that nothing in this agreement shall prevent, limit, or otherwise interfere with the right of the city to terminate at its will and without cause the services of the employee as the acting city manager, subject to the employee's right to continue as the assistant city manager. So it's all about not terminating her employment with the city, but relieving her of her duties as acting city manager at the discretion of the city council. And my point is, why would you want to hamstring yourself and only have the ability by contract to reassign her back to her old position. I mean, that's council's prerogative, but I don't think it's advisable.
And
And
just to highlight real quick, that's actually why I seconded for discussion is if Councilwoman Pontieri's motion goes too far, then at the very least, I think we should dial it back that we can remove an interim city manager without cause with the prerequisite that we have a workshop around it. What I think my biggest qualm is that we hadn't had a discussion amongst our city council members of the previous situation that occurred. So if we can't gain consensus, because I understand where our legal counsel is coming from in that regard, but I think at the very least, we should be ensuring that we have a proper, not only public notice for this type of issue, but also for all of our council members to be able to weigh in on such a, I want to say heavy decision, because it is. Yeah.
Okay. Counselor, just one other question. In terms of if we follow Councilwoman Pontieri's requested change to contract, does that set precedent that could be used by others in the future in any way?
Well, I mean, it would
We are
be in-
suggesting that we keep we protect the rights of city council as best we can. Does this open that door for precedents?
Well, I think it becomes part of the record, but contracts are negotiable. So I don't think it sets precedent in that regard.
Okay. Additional discussion? I'm
I
going
would
to ask for a vote on this.
I
in
would
a minute.
disagree that on that one subject, anything we do does set a precedent. And what we are looking at here, and this is labeled right in our agenda, it's not acting city manager that we're discussing, it's interim city manager. And that, to me, is a different position.
Counselor, I got to ask you, with the legal, not jargonese, acting versus interim, is there a legal differential there in those two words? I'm not a lawyer, I can't speak to
The
that.
charter refers to it as acting
So
city
you-
manager
they're-
and
they're-
interim
okay.
city
Same,
manager. It's a
okay.
temporary appointment that you're considering.
Any final discussion before I call for a vote? Go
Well,
ahead.
Mayor, I mean, I take everybody's comments seriously and the input, and I agree with Councilman Clufus's position. I also agree, I don't want to hamstring anybody, but the motion was we would keep Ms. Johnston in the position of acting city manager until we have a permanent hire. That was the motion, that's what passed. If we don't want to change the language of the contract, which I'm okay with, but it needs to be very clear that that was the motion that passed. Also, I agree that, first of all, and this is no disrespect to you, Mayor, but it's my opinion that adding the agenda item during your comments to the agenda last time was not in accordance with our policies and procedures. So if this issue does come up again, the way it should work per our policies and procedures is that there should be consensus to have a discussion regarding the city manager's position. Consensus has to be garnered from city council, and then it's put on the agenda for the next meeting. That is how our policies and procedures work. So that is what should have been done. It is, if we are going to accept the contract as is, then great, but there needs to be an understanding that if we are going to take action to remove her, which would be improper based on the motion, but if that's the action that wanted to be taken, consensus from city council would have to be garnered, and then it would have to be put on the next business meeting agenda.
So what you're asking is, in the future, if we were to change or add to our policies and procedures, which I have here, that there be some workshopping process in advance of this type of decision. That's, I kind of think, what you're asking.
No, I'm not
You're not
asking
asking for
for a
that.
change. I'm asking for us to follow the way they're currently
So
written.
where in the policies, the meeting policies and procedures, does it suggest that that has to happen?
So the meeting policies and procedures, first of all, under section H of, if you go to V, order of business, section A says, there shall be an official agenda for every meeting at city council, which shall determine the order of business conducted at the meeting. All proceedings and the order of business at all meetings of the city council shall be conducted in accordance with the official agenda, subject to matters being added to an agenda consistent with these policies and procedures. If you scroll down to section H, it says city council comments, and this is why I bring this up, Mayor, because the action that you took 2 weeks ago was during the city council comments. It says
Correct.
the purpose of city council comments is to promote the public discussion of city business and to encourage the dissemination of information. The city council shall take no major policy action without an agenda item unless such is approved by the consent of the city council, but may take action to address exigent matters, which relieving our city manager was not, or to
So
ensure,
let's-
hold on, or
okay.
to ensure that matters are addressed in a timely manner. Then, if we go down to section J, it says placing items on an agenda. Matters may be placed on the agenda by the city manager or by any member of the city council. When a city council member wishes to place a matter on the agenda, the city council member shall raise the matter at a regular city council meeting or workshop and seek the city council's consent for inclusion of the matter at the next available regular agenda or in exigent circumstances or circumstances clearly warranting immediate action on the current agenda. So you have to get consent either way.
Except you used the word exigent, and that's the same word that I use, so we can look up the definition, but we both know what it means, so that would be the
That's
basis
an
from which.
emergency.
Well, okay,
Yes.
correct,
And removing our city manager was certainly not an emergency.
in your opinion.
Okay?
I appreciate
But
that.
either way, Mayor, you had to have gotten consent to either add it to
Oh,
this
no,
agenda.
Not if it specifically excludes if it's an exigent circumstance, is what I'm claiming.
And Mr. Mayor, I would add, precedent
The language
for
is
that-
fairly simple there.
Precedent for that had already been previously set when the last city manager was terminated without cause.
Doesn't make it right.
Okay.
It became a precedent that was not challenged, and,
So-
in a court of law, precedent has some.
So with regard to the contract which is being discussed now, if there's no further discussion, I would go ahead and ask for a.
Talking about Matt Morton
Yes.
or Jim Landon?
I'm sorry?
We're talking about Matt Morton or Jim Landon?
Jim Landing.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
Matt Morton, despite
Resigned.
what I've read from other people, obviously he was not
Resigned.
terminated,
We were all
he
there.
resigned.
But also
We were
just to
here.
lay a little framework back then too, we had a bunch of meetings about how we were going to move forward from Jim Landon moving forward. And I just wanted to make the public clear, back in 2017, we had many, many workshops about how we were going to be able to transition forward successfully. So I just wanted to add that detail in there. It wasn't just on, on site.
So again, if there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and ask the clerk to, does anybody need the motion restated, or are we good? So we're voting on the contract
Are we
itself
on
now.
Teresa's motion?
Correct, yes, on the
So
contract.
I'll amend my motion.
Yeah.
I'm happy to amend my
Okay.
motion. I'm happy to make a motion to accept the contract as is, with the recognition that the motion that carried unanimously was to keep Lauren Johnston as our acting city manager until we permanently hire a city manager. That was the motion.
So that's your motion.
So that's my motion.
Okay, now, there was a
That was-
second, so are you okay to have that change?
I'm okay with the amendment, and I'm just, if we're going to try to move in a different direction, the most important thing to me is that we have this notice to the public, but also that we have a discussion about this amongst our council. What my biggest fear is that we are making moves up here that we haven't actually discussed amongst ourselves to try to set the vision for how we're going to be able to move forward. And I believe that would take care of that, right?
Yes.
Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion, and we have a second. So if there's no further discussion, does this need to go out to the public?
Of course.
Okay, then at this point in time, I would open up this agenda item for public comment. 3 minutes, please.
Peter Johnson, Palm Coast. So I agree with both Teresa and Mr. Kloufis, and one of my personal concerns was I did a public records request with the city, and I asked for Denise Bevan's contract. And in the contract, it specifically states why you can fire her with or without cause. One of the reasons to fire her with cause was you had to do basically it didn't specify the time period, but it said that you had to refer to an employee, I'm forgetting the jargon right now, to be perfectly honest with you, like a sort of a overview of how her performance, basically, like I forget what the specific word.
Speak into the mic.
Sorry, a performance review, basically, and you could fire her based off of that. But after doing more research and requesting that performance review, you guys never did a performance review for Denise ever. So firing her with cause was not even a possibility because you didn't do the performance review. So to keep the option to fire someone without cause, I understand the council's concern. But it's pretty apparent, and I think Ms. Johnson even is aware, that you guys are going to place her back into her position. So to keep with firing without cause, it has to be addressed. You guys have to have some sort of public participation, as Mr. Klufas says, or some sort of discussion before you guys just at will fire someone. And then furthermore, to even try to make the motion to go forward with it, like, I'm not sure that this council's the one that should be able to make that decision, quite frankly, because most likely 3 of you won't be here. So the biggest thing is if you want transparency and you want to go forward and make sure that we have everything in place for her, I don't think it's unreasonable to set some standards into how we hire and fire the city manager. And to do it like a Trump-style apprentice show. While I understand that this is the dais and it has to be done, you guys are only responsible for her, and the city attorney. It was just extremely unprofessional in the manner that it was handled. So going forward, it is imperative that we do it in a way more professional and appropriate manner. I'll just say that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address me on this item? Either one. Go ahead.
So first I want,
Here,
Kathy, Mike, sorry.
Thank you.
Kathy Ostrino, Palm Coast resident. I appreciate you bringing up Landon. I forgot about that. We had tons and tons of meetings about that. So, and if I go too early in the agenda for what I have to say, just please let me know. But I feel like this is the opportunity to say what's going on. You know, perception is reality. And here, we have, you know, the sudden firing, and I struggle with it. I agreed that she needed to not be in that position, nothing against her. I don't like how it went down. That's, you know, that's what I struggle with. But it looks like there's a hidden agenda going on, and it looks very gamey with some counselors and not other counselors, and it's very concerning. And now, of course, we have the article. The rumor on the street is that we're looking at, or someone, or maybe a couple, are looking at bringing back someone from the past. If you recall, I pulled some old information. On December 19th, 2018, it was published, teacher, police, fire unions joined call to fire Craig Coffey with the help from Melissa Holland. You recall that. You were in the meetings, I believe, with me. Not with me, but I think we're in the same meetings. It was horrifying to treat a man this way. You know, we don't want that. However, that name will come back, Melissa Holland. Then, February 20th, 2019, Flagler chooses Jerry Cameron as interim county administrator. Okay. Then, I met with Jerry, just so you have my experience, on Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. I scheduled a meeting with him, as he is now the county manager. That meeting lasted 1 minute. He was so rude and just, seriously, 1 minute, I sat down. He was disgraceful to me, and I just got up and walked out. That'll come back too. Then, November 20th, 2019, I sent an email to Jerry with a screenshot of one of the county commissioners bribing one of our residents. I'm still waiting to hear back from him. I checked my email. I don't have a return email on that one. November 22nd, 2019. In August of 2019, Cameron sold land to the Mullins Company. You remember Mullins? He was a fella on the county commission who wanted to decapitate our Democrat friends. You remember that? They were close. They used to go to games together. I have tickets and pictures, and they were very close. He sold it for $100,000 less than it was listed. There's probably perfectly fine, probably perfectly legal. I have tons of things he tried to do in interfering with elections on 2 different occasions. Let's be very careful where we're going here. Let's be very careful with the hidden agendas. Thank you.
For your comment. Next speaker, please.
Celia Puglisi, resident since 1991.
Thank you, Celia.
Before we incorporated, I went to all the county meetings, like I come to these. I haven't been in the last one over personal reasons. I voted for this city to incorporate because I despise what the county was doing to us while we were under them. They even changed quite a few of the original plannings that ITT had for us, damaging Palm Coasters. We have nothing to learn from the county, absolutely nothing. And I wouldn't like really to see a former manager of the county here being a manager of the city. This is the way I feel at this moment. I think in many ways, for my experience being a resident, a taxpayer, is that we're having a problem with some of our administrators and what they do. And they influence this council because the council and mayor cannot get into what is called, quote unquote, micromanaging. But I will be speaking here as a paying taxpayer. Why is so many of us here in the city do not like an assistant and staff, chief of staff created, a chief of staff position created for a former home builders association of almost 15 years lobbying for the local home builders? We don't like that, the residents. We don't want this person to become a manager. We don't want this person to continue influencing so much our council against the wishes of the residents. We have some administrators that have not really worked for what the best of the interest of the residents, and we've been enduring that. And they affect you because they present to you these plans already pre-cooked. And there is almost, you can't say no. And I see that. And so Ms. Vivan was sacrificed over that. Ms. Vivan was approachable. She tried to meet with us. She met with us trying to resolve issues. We need to try to resolve the issues with the people that we have. And if some of the ones that we have that are too powerful and control the manager, these people is the one that they need to go, okay? We need to have a strong manager on Lauren Johnston. She could not be controlled by administrators. She needs to do what is best for the city and is best for the residents. And we'll be watching very close that. We don't need any more this control of these developers on our council, our mayor. You get a bad rap over that. You govern for us, and we elect you to represent us. Please watch what you're doing with our next manager and keep her, because at least she knows what's going on.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
Excuse me.
I came down here for one night.
Please introduce yourself.
Bruce Jones, C-section. Mayor, you have to control your staff. Last day meeting, I watched it on tape, and a councilman to call someone who's done traffic for probably 15 years here, to call him a liar is disgusting. And we know who we're talking about, Nick. There is no ban on trucks. Try driving down Florida Park Drive. Just try it, instead of living in your high-end complex. Cimarron's the same thing, fighting 6 years. Nothing's done, nothing. You read the comments. Talk to the people on that street. Talk about what they think about the traffic. You know, you need to control your staff. Good luck, because I think you'll never get, I don't even think you'll make the primary. You'll be toasted. Take care.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address this agenda item at this time? Seeing no one come forward, I'll come back to the dais. Is there any final discussion?
Yes, I want to just make some comments to Ms. Johnson. I want you to know I respect you tremendously. I think you've been doing a great job as the assistant city manager. I want to see you continue in that role. Nobody on this council wants to fire you. Pretty much think I speak for all of us on that. However, I don't want you to fall into the same trap that Denise Bevan fell into. Someday, you will be highly qualified to be a city manager.
Address to me, please.
Well,
Talk to me. Yeah.
Letting Lauren know, too.
Yeah, she can hear you.
But that day is not today, Lauren, and I'd hate to see what happened being repeated, and then down the road, a new city manager is hired, and you'll be, that'll be at his pleasure what to do with anyone on staff.
Okay.
So I would hope that you would think about that and realize we need to bring in somebody from the outside, somebody with a fresh perspective, at least that's my view.
Okay.
And that this is, I think you would be great staying in the spot that you are in. I really do. You and
Okay.
Jason have been doing a great job.
Any final discussion?
I would just like to make a comment also to Lauren Johnston. I've had the privilege of working with you for several weeks now, and I absolutely think that you have done an amazing job as our acting city manager, and I look forward to working with you for a long time in the future. I too am not positive that you might be completely ready for this position to carry on, but I do know moving forward that you will be at some point. But I have to say, absolutely, you've been a joy, a pleasure to work with. I think that you know this city pretty well inside out, and everything that makes the wheels turn, and you're moving totally in the right direction. I want to commend you on everything you've done. Last week, I let you know when we met yesterday, you did an amazing job handling our council meeting last week. So I give you all the credit, and I think you've done an amazing job.
Final discussion?
No, all of those things, I think everything's been said. Yeah.
So I want to respond to Vice Mayor Danko's comments. So first of all, to me, your comments there's two issues. One, feigning support of her in this position, and then almost threatening that she's going to be put into the same
I don't really
position.
think you should be.
All right. One speaker, hold on, one speaker at a time,
I'm not
please.
going to sit here and tolerate
Well,
that type
then
of
don't,
nonsense.
then you know where the door is.
Seriously.
One speaker at a time, okay?
When you say to somebody, I
Have
don't
your
want
time.
you to fall into the same trap as Denise did. We made a motion that Lauren Johnston is to remain the acting city manager until we hire a permanent city manager. And per the mayor's suggestion, which I think we all agreed with, we were going to go to the League of Cities for that. So that's not even a real thing. We're not even doing that. She will not be permanent city manager. And per her contract, she is to go back down to acting city manager, or rather assistant city manager. So if we accept the contract as is, which is what we all agreed to do 2 weeks ago, then we are sticking with our motion. We are doing what we said we were going to do, going to the well for the permanent city manager. To now do a 180 on that because there's been backdoor talks and dealings is the last thing our city needs right now. What we need is light. What we need is sunshine. What we need is to stick with the motion that I made that passed and to move forward to find a permanent city manager from the League of Cities, keeping stability and continuity in our city in the meantime. That is what is important. We are scaring off people from coming here, from developing here, from doing economic development here because we can't even follow a motion that was made and passed unanimously 2 weeks ago. It's totally inappropriate.
Okay. All right, if there's no other discussion, then we have a contract and a motion and a second, so I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote, to vote on in favor or not in favor of the amended motion.
No, it's just accepting the contract as is.
I'm sorry.
Yes, you're right. Amending the motion, but to accept the contract
Correct,
as
as
is.
is.
And
That's
there's
correct.
some, excuse me,
Wait,
Mr.
wait, wait,
President.
wait, wait,
Council.
I have one other question about this contract. What is the salary?
It's,
189,
189.
189.
Okay, so
It's exactly
we have a
what the city
motion, we have a
manager-
second, we've had discussion, so I'm going to ask the clerk to go ahead and call the vote.
Vice Mayor Danko,
No.
Councilmember Hyder,
No.
Councilmember Clufus,
Yes.
Councilmember Pontieri,
Yes.
Mayor Alfin.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-2.
Now,